Good evening. I'm Shannon Ogden.
And I'm Trujillo. We have heard you, Colorado. You want news that presents all sides of important issues and lets you make up your own mind.
So that's why Denver7 created 360, multiple viewpoints, giving you straight answers.
One of the most controversial issues in Colorado is drilling for oil and gas. No one can forget these images. A house burning to the ground, an explosion caused by a gas leak. 2 lives lost. It
ignited the statewide conversation. How close is too close to drill near homes? And so much of Colorado's booming economy is tied to the oil and gas industry. It leaves us with a dilemma. Keep Colorado booming and risk something happening to our families, or shut it all down and risk a plummeting economy, home values, jobs, our quality of life.
We begin our 360 special tonight with a look at the most pressing issue facing all of us here in Colorado, drilling. Here is Jennifer Kovaleski.
When people don't hear from you, it's really easy to make you guys the bad guys. Colorado's largest oil and gas company is telling its story.
We get it.
And wants to set the record straight. What kind of impact is the public opposition having on the industry? Before we get to Anadarko's answer to that question, let's go 360 on how we got here.
No drill! I feel like this town is under siege.
This is absolutely not safe.
Every conflict, no matter how big, has a trigger point.
Their cars are there.
In Colorado, you're looking at it. This deadly house explosion last year in Firestone. It was caused by non-odorous gas leaking from an uncapped flow line. The gas came from this nearby well owned by Anadarko.
After Firestone, things have changed.
2 men were killed, and a flashpoint ignited as tempers flared and voices raised, demanding accountability.
People are starting to get woke.
There is nothing safe about this. There is no set of regulations that can make this safe.
In response, concerned neighbors have turned public comment into open mic tongue lashings at meetings across the state. A rally cry for more regulation and less drilling near neighborhoods became the mantra. The oil and gas industry had become the enemy.
They're going closer into neighborhoods. They're going in the middle of neighborhoods now.
It isn't just the proximity to homes and schools many decry. Not just the safety concerns either. It's also the noise and smells and dust and trucks.
For me, it feels like it's a constant attack on my overall senses.
Worst of all, some say, is a feeling of helplessness. The feeling that the oil industry's deep pockets are lining those of local lawmakers who are turning a blind eye.
We know who protects the industry, who protects the people.
But all this noise needs a reality check. There's no denying these neighbors have valid concerns. They do. Men have died. Neighborhoods have changed. But hold your horses, many say. Mother Nature created Denver's oil-rich Julesburg Basin 300 million years ago. And oil rigs started popping up along it in the late 1800s. In other words, the oil companies got here first. The neighborhoods followed. And a clash was born. And our Colorado's boom is pushing more and more homes into oil country. So who's really to blame? And is it time for the two sides to learn to work together? Activists will tell you, no way. But Anadarko sees it as the only way.
We have to work together to come up with solutions to be able to develop both as a residential area and for oil and gas development.
Let's bring it back to Anadarko's head of safety, Corby Bracken.
I will say we haven't been good at that in the past.
Anadarko admits they need to do a better job educating the public about oil and gas.
I think we've been sheltered, and we just continue to develop the resource, but now so we're behind.
And that's why they've agreed to go 360 with us, answering that question we started with. What kind of impact is the public opposition having on the industry?
We listen to those concerns, and we implement changes to our operations to address those concerns. We can't address all of them.
Bracken took us out to one of Anadarko's active drilling sites.
So right now we are about 8 miles north of Lock Buoy, Colorado.
To see behind the sound barriers.
That's one of the visible things that you see as you're driving up and down 25.
He showed us firsthand how they are addressing some of the concerns.
The loudest thing that we try to mitigate is what you hear behind us is the shale shakers.
These shale shakers are responsible for those low-frequency drumming noises that people hate the most.
We've really worked hard to enclose those shale shakers to reduce the amount of noise.
Bracken says Anadarko is also using new drilling mud to cut down on those gas odors.
A product that we can blend with that material to help neutralize that odor that gets rid of that smell.
As we continue on this 360 journey, we can't lose sight of the undeniable upside of the industry. The benefits of oil and gas production in our state are monumental. Towns have been built, communities formed, schools funded, and more than 230,000 people employed by oil and gas. Anadarko alone supports 1,100 jobs in Colorado. And for each well Anadarko drills, Bracken says the impacted communities pocket $300,000 in local tax revenue.
Over the last 5 years, Anadarko alone has spent about $10 billion in the state of Colorado. We have good rock here in Colorado.
The key to the oil and shale boom in Colorado is new technology, known as fracking and horizontal drilling. As a result, operators are able to produce 10 times more oil, making drilling more profitable, which is why we're seeing more rigs closer to neighborhoods. And to be clear, they're allowed to be here. Current state rules say new wells have to be 500 feet from houses.
Why not just push them back even further?
You know, drilling technology doesn't allow us to reach from, our surface location to 3 miles. We're limited in terms of how far we can reach.
Fast forward to now.
You need to protect us.
And the public outcry is reaching new levels.
It should not be happening this close to homes and schools, period.
So what's next? And how does this story end? There are clearly pros and cons on both sides. But with the noise so polarized around oil and gas, is it really possible to find common ground? Opponents see the solution as more local control over new drilling in neighborhoods and point to Initiative 97, a state ballot measure that could ask voters this November to force rigs out of backyards. They want to increase the setback for new wells to 2,500 feet, 5 times what it is now.
We've taken it into our own hands, and we're going to protect our communities, and we're going to protect our homes.
Personally, for me, in my role, I wouldn't mind having my house as close to a well as my developer will build it. I know it's safe.
The flip side in this argument, Bracken says, is all of the money Colorado will lose if Initiative 97 passes. The tens of thousands of jobs and cash flowing into local communities, paying for schools and roads, all goes away. So no matter which side of the argument you land on, one thing is clear. The outcome of the next few months will have lasting impacts on the future of oil and gas in our state.
Even if it's not in your neighborhood, this is the health of our state, and this is the future of our state.
Jennifer Kowaleski, Denver 7.
We've heard from so many of you wanting to share your thoughts on the story. Chad says the same people that will complain about oil will be using a car or something that takes oil. Someone will always cry and complain about something. I say if it brings jobs and opportunities to our state, let it happen. Now, Scott says this industrial development has no place in communities or neighborhoods. Jacob disagrees. He says it's unnecessary and extremely bad for Colorado. The costs certainly outweigh the benefits. And Sandy, bring them on. Let them drill. They can drill on my land anytime. It's easy to be a part of this conversation. Just email us, 360@thedenverchannel.com. You can also send us a message on Facebook or Twitter. We read every one of them.
A study from University of Colorado Health shows the number of adults with Alzheimer's and dementia is steadily increasing, which opens up an interesting debate. When is it time for seniors to give up their guns? Jacqueline Allen goes 360 on armed and aging.
My dad is 94 and a half.
For the daughter of a World War II veteran,
He feels like he knows how to handle guns.
the difficult conversation about guns started
He has moderate Alzheimer's disease.
out of concern for his safety.
He's lived a good long life, but, I don't want him to take it.
She had reason to worry. To give some context, a new CU School of Medicine study shows firearms are the most common method of suicide among people with dementia. But there are other serious concerns. People with dementia can experience hallucinations, delusions, aggression, and paranoia. And the study's lead author, Dr. Emmy Betts, found many have access to guns. Up to 45% of older adults live in a home with a firearm.
As with driving, the message here is not that we should take all the guns away from older people. I think we're saying that With time and with cognitive changes, people lose their ability to do things they once could do. And so we should help them prepare for those changes.
So let's go 360 and get more views.
1 out of 9 people have some type of dementia.
Wheat Ridge Police Division Chief Jim Lawrence has given dementia training to thousands of local first responders.
With a growing population of people experiencing dementia, it's going to be more and more of a problem.
And while his primary concern is suicide,
sometimes people with dementia don't recognize their loved ones. So if a gun is available to a person that's in that condition, that's very dangerous to the public.
He says just like handing over the keys, people need to have conversations about handing over the guns. At the least, caregivers could reduce risks by removing ammunition from the home, storing firearms unloaded, or disabling the trigger mechanism. But on the other side, just like with the proposed red flag law, allowing police to take guns from those considered a danger to themselves or others, gun owners are worried about their rights.
It is a little bit different than with driving, as driving is a privilege, it's not a right. And via the Second Amendment, owning a firearm is a right. And so unless you can be proven unfit in a court of law, then I don't believe anyone should be able to take that right away.
On the flip side, the CU study notes about 89% of Americans support limiting firearm purchases and access to those with a mental illness.
As the disease progresses, a person may misperceive danger.
Danelle Hubbard with the Alzheimer's Association says her agency provides resources for families, like a firearm plan. Most important, she says, have the gun talk early on.
It allows a person living with dementia to have a choice and a voice.
A reality check, though. For many, just like driving, guns represent independence.
He's just always been an independent and strong person, strong-willed, stubborn. And so, he really didn't want to talk about it, because, he's going to live the way he wants to live kind of thing.
This daughter quietly removed several guns from her father's house recently and has no regrets.
I just thought this is the safest way to get him out of the house, and this way no harm will come to anyone.
Has he come around?
I think he's okay, more or less okay with it.
Armed and aging, more and more Americans are facing the same delicate situation when having a plan could mean the difference between life and death. Jacqueline Allen, Denver 7.
Talking about religion can be uncomfortable.
Especially when you're not sure what you believe. So, how to talk to your kids about it? You let them choose their own faith. You force yours on them. Up next, a very personal 360, talking to your kids about God.
And easing congestion on Colorado's busiest corridor. Would you pay to shorten your commute? Are families in nearby neighborhoods in danger? A 360 look at the future of I-70.
People in this country and in Colorado are moving away from organized religion and regular church attendance. The most recent Gallup poll on the subject found that 21% of Americans have no formal religious identity. They either say they're atheist, agnostic, or nothing in particular. Now, when Gallup first started asking that question back in the 1940s, only 2% said the same. And in this 360, we explore the question, if you don't regularly worship, if you don't consider yourself religious, what do you tell your kids about God and religion? Now, my parents never had to have the God talk with me because I was always at church. Sunday mornings, Sunday nights, Sunday afternoons for choir practice, back again on Wednesday nights. But I don't really go to church much anymore. I'm a recovering Baptist with a lot of Southern Baptist baggage. I believe in God. I pray. I just don't go to church or talk about it much. So what do I tell my 3-year-old daughter about these things? Well, the first view in this 360, maybe I don't directly address it at all. My sense of right and wrong didn't come from the church. It came from my parents, as did learning the golden rule, treat others as you want to be treated. Now, this particular approach would allow us to keep sleeping in on Sundays, but it also seems like a lazy answer to our question. To a different view in this 360. Exposure to all the major religions, Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, etc., see what appeals to her, and she can eventually choose for herself. Now, this is a popular option these days. It's certainly how we choose everything else. Which is the best lawnmower? Read about all the lawnmowers and choose the best lawnmower for you. And there's logic in this approach. But in another view, isn't my job as her father to guide her? I don't let her loose in a hardware store to explore. If I did, she most definitely would figure out what is and is not a good idea to mess with in there, but I don't think that's very nice when I could have just explained a mousetrap to her. Now, still another view in this 360, do what my parents did. Raise her like I was raised. I believe what I believe because it's what my parents believe. I turned out okay, and there's also value in tradition. And there'll be some of you who think even asking these questions is inappropriate, maybe even blasphemous. And I get that. But the reality is, this is the reality now for a lot of us, and a growing number of us. And at the end of the day, we're asking these questions because we all want to raise our children to be kind, compassionate people who contribute to the world. And I suppose if we're painfully honest, these questions may be hard because we're not satisfied with our own beliefs. Now, is this something you're dealing with or have dealt with? What are you going to do? What did you do? I'd love to know. We welcome any and all comments you have on this, good, bad, or otherwise. We read them all. 360 at thedenverchannel.com.
Like it or not, the project to expand I-70 in central Denver is moving forward. That's the plan to bury much of the highway you see here below grade level, replacing the current elevated viaduct. In the long run, it could mean less congestion. In the short term, years of construction. Mark Stewart takes a 360 look to help you decide if it will be worth it for you.
It's known as one of Colorado's most congested corridors, I-70 between Denver and Aurora. I-70 is seen as a backbone for our state, connecting the east to the west, and the gridlock is getting worse. Here's the 360 overview. When the interstate was built in 1964, 2 million people lived in our state. Today, 5 million people live in Colorado. By 2040, that number is expected to soar to 8 million. The reality is this. According to CDOT, if something isn't done soon, in some cases, trips on I-70 could take twice as long as they do now by 2035. As part of the plan, an express lane will be added in both directions from I-25 to Chambers Road. An old viaduct would be removed. While there won't be a tax hike to pay for this, tolls will help cover the cost. This is necessary, right? Most would say yes, yet with progress comes pain.
It would wipe out about a quarter of the Elyria neighborhood.
Some people have been forced to move from the Elyria-Swansea neighborhoods. Families who have lived there for decades expressing concern about their health and the growth they feel is taking over their community.
We are trying to get the attention of our city and state leaders who so far have ignored us.
A new 4-acre park and play space would be built over part of the highway. There would also be new affordable housing. So what's next? What does this mean for you? CDOT says the goal is to keep I-70 open during the construction, with lane closures taking place overnight. The plan is to keep the interstate moving without any kind of wholesale impact on your drive time. Some context, the project here won't be a fix-all for I-70. The congestion along I-70 in the mountains is another concern. Express lanes, even a hyperloop, are seen as part of the solution there. But again, money is hard to find, and lawmakers still don't have a long-term plan on how to fund a long list of other projects across the state. A struggle involving cash and congestion in Colorado. Mark Stewart, Denver 7.
Voters approved it.
Native grasses, you have the tree grove over there.
Now Denver lawmakers grapple with how to implement the city's new green roof ordinance.
There are a few things that we need to tweak in order to make this a real viable operation.
We go 360 on green roofs next.
Colorado is a state with many people and many ideas, but how to make those ideas become a reality can be a big sticking point.
For example, Denver voters decided back in November they wanted green roofs on new and existing buildings. Might be a great idea, but it means the city is now tasked with figuring out how to make that happen, and that's not an easy task.
Jennifer Kowaleski gives us a 360 look at the challenges of implementing Denver's green future.
When Denver voters passed the Green Roof Initiative, despite opposition from developers and the city.
The word green roofs just sounds so great.
This is what organizers envisioned rooftops in downtown Denver would look like. Garden oases, rich with green space and solar panels, meant to improve air quality and lower temperatures.
Native grasses, you have the tree grove over there.
Denver developer Kyle Zeppelin is way ahead of the green roof rush. He's already installing one here at Flight, his latest office development in River North that's already 90% full.
People like spaces that open up to green landscape.
As a supporter, his view is the long-term benefits outweigh the upfront costs and sees green roofs as part of Denver's environmental solution.
Buildings are one of the leading contributors to global warming, emissions. To be part of the solution, we really got to start making some moves.
On the other hand,
there are a few things that we need to tweak in order to make this a real viable operation.
The city says while the intentions of the ordinance were good, the implementation is much more complex. Have you ever had a situation quite like this?
Marijuana.
Unlike marijuana, Denver isn't the first city to do green roofs, but Councilwoman Mary Beth Sussman says we are the first to require it for existing buildings.
It's the most complicated part of this, because if you go to fix your roof, this ordinance is going to apply. And we worry that it might mean that people won't be fixing their roofs.
Sussman is on the task force working to smooth out the ordinance's language. The latest recommendations are all about alternatives. If green roofs aren't feasible, builders can pay to fund off-site green space or have more energy-efficient buildings. Under the current rules that took effect in January, it's green roofs and solar panels or nothing.
It would cost about $137,000 more for a building of 25,000 square feet to comply.
Other views aren't so sold on the riches of Denver's green roof future.
Everyone is kind of scratching their head and trying to figure out how to comply with the ordinance right now.
Denver developer David Burton is concerned about increased construction and maintenance costs, which he says will likely end up being passed on to renters and buyers.
With today's expensive rent and expensive sale prices, this is not a great thing for Denver.
So what's next in Denver's green roof future? Well, it's up to City Council. They can alter a voter-approved ordinance 6 months after it takes effect and plan to do so.
We are trying to find a way where we can reduce that cost.
The question now is, what kind of compromise will they reach? And how do they not lose sight of the lush green rooftops voters envisioned? In Denver, Jennifer Kovaleski, Denver 7.
We want you to know we are listening, Colorado.
The good, the bad, every angle. We want to hear from you. Share your thoughts on the things happening in your community by emailing us at 360@thedenverchannel.com. You can also send us a message on Facebook or Twitter. I'm Ann Trujillo.
And I'm Shannon Ogden. And for all of us here at Denver 7, thanks for joining us.
And we will see you next time. Good night.